Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about Mars moving into the third decan of Taurus. So this is the area of the zodiac between 20 and 30 degrees of Taurus, and we're going to break it down. We're going to be talking about Venus squaring Mars during this period on the 19th of February. We are going to be talking about a few fixed stars. Mars is going to be conjoining Capulus at 24 degrees of Taurus and Algol at 26 degrees of Taurus. That's going to be happening on the 21st and the 25th of February, respectively. And then we'll try to break down Mars's trine with Pluto on the 24th. So, like we do on these forecasts, we will be doing an I-Ching reading and trying to make some sense out of all of this. This is an intense one. This is one where we'll have to deal with some underworld themes here. So we'll try to unpack it the best that we can. I wanted to thank all of you that came to the new moon live stream a few days ago. We did a new moon in Aquarius 3 live stream, and that was really fun. So I really appreciate all of you that came out and checked that out. I think I'm going to try to make that a regular thing at the new and the full moon. So keep your eyes out for the full moon version on February the 27th. And if you want to get notifications for when I'm going to be going live, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And you can sign up on my mailing list too. That's on my website, spencermichaud.com. Yeah, it was a great time, and we had some really great questions. And thank you all for participating. So with that being said, let's take a look at our chart and try to break down our time period here with Mars in the third decan of Taurus. So today is Valentine's Day, February the 14th, and this is the day of the ingress of Mars into the third decan of Taurus. So this happened around 9:43 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, and it will be traversing this area of the zodiac until March the 3rd at 10:30 or so p.m., when it will move into Gemini. So this is Mars in its exile, a place where it is opposite one of its domiciles, opposite Scorpio in the sign of Taurus. This is a Venus-ruled area of the zodiac, a Venus-ruled temple. So if we're trying to create our astrological sentences, Mars is the verb that is creating severing, separation, aggression, anger. It's challenging us to have courage so that we can overcome some of the difficulties that are inherent in the path where Mars is treading. Mars is also the planet of bad fortune. So this is something where we may be experiencing a hardship that isn't necessarily any fault of our own. And that may come through Venus type significations. So this could come through our pursuit of our desires. It could come through Venus was a natural significator of women in our life. It could come through the women in our life. It could come through our attachment to beauty and to lust or things of that nature. With Venus moving through the third decan of Aquarius during this period of time, okay, let's just take a look at this where everything is right now. This is going to be, actually, Venus is in the second decan of Aquarius as I speak, but it will shortly be moving into the third decan. So Venus is basically in a Saturn-ruled sign. So Venus is trying to smooth over, leaving the past behind and embracing an idealistic future, and perhaps through the creation of some kind of new social agreement. So we may be experiencing some hardship as we are trying to leave the past behind, as we're trying to maybe recover from some kind of defeat that we experienced that was idealistic. Maybe that there was some kind of, I like the word narrative, because I think a lot of our life is based on the stories that we tell ourselves, and we take a lot of our actions based on our beliefs, and our beliefs are just stories. So we may have experienced a defeat during this period of time. based on a narrative that was either false or what was outdated. And we're experiencing a separation from potentially some of the physical resources in our life as well, with Mars moving through Taurus and the Earth sign of Taurus. In the second decan of Taurus, our natural routines, our natural rhythms were disrupted. And as we move into the third decan, there is a natural progression between Taurus 1, 2, and 3. In the first decan, we're kind of planning for how we're going to plant the fields of our life. In the second decan, we're creating success through some kind of consistent effort over time. And in the third decan, we may be protecting our creation or our fields from a threat, from something that would maybe create, pestilence or some kind of challenge to the things that we're trying to bring into fruition. This was a Saturn ruled face of Taurus. So it is a double Saturn ruled face by the Chaldean system and by the triplicity system. So this is something where we may have to protect against things that wish to threaten us, or things that wish to disrupt our creative process. We may have to do the hard work necessary of tending to the creation that we've tried to make. We may feel an aggressive need to do that. So this could be where we feel like we're trying to create something new. All right, we're trying to create fertility, which requires patience. The key with this decan is patience and faith. But with Mars here, we may be trying to either rush the process, we may be overly aggressive in defending ourselves against perceived threats. We may be trying to rush something that is going to, that really requires us to be receptive and to allow the natural process to happen. So that's something to consider as we move forward here. Mars will be moving through the terms of Jupiter from 14 to 22 degrees, then moving into the terms of Saturn from 22 to 27 degrees. And then it will have dignity by as its own bound lord from 27 to 30 degrees. Now, when planets move into the area of the zodiac with malefic bound lords are kind of like the curriculum setters, the malefic planets being Saturn and Mars. It's a little bit more difficult territory, for a planet. We're always kind of experiencing maybe some tough lessons where we have to kind of, rebalance through either contraction or through leaving something behind. So this may be part of our story here as well. Book T calls this tarot card, the VII of Pentacles, failure. Book of Thoth calls it success unfulfilled. Here we see a figure leaning on a farm tool, some kind of hoe or something like that, where he is, looking at what he's created and maybe having to have patience. Maybe he's disappointed about what the fruits of his labor, that we see a lot of leaves, but not a lot of fruit on the vine yet. So it may be where we're still having to toil away at our craft, but we're not seeing the results of that yet. And that could be leading to some frustration. Maybe you've worked really hard and you're not really receiving the benefit yet. Austin Coppock calls this card a string of prayer beads. And that's really interesting because that's going to be part of our story today, which will include its daimon, or its spirit that was associated with this decan in an ancient Hellenistic fragment called 36 Heirs of the Zodiac. And the daimon associated with this decan is the Litai. And the Litai were spirits of prayer. So this is a decan that requires patience, faith. Repentance is another word that came up with this. So the Litai were always counterbalanced with the Daimon 8, ATE, which was a spirit of delusion and folly. We could also call 8 error. And this was associated with rash actions, reckless impulse. 8 would lead people down the path of ruin through her impulsiveness. She was a daughter of Eris being strife, and the sister of toil, forgetfulness, starvation, pains, and a litany of other difficult things, personifications in Greek mythology. So 8 is basically like causing people to rush into things, to disregard the natural process, and leading them, maybe even through hubris, into ruin. Ruin is another key word associated with 8. But the Litai, now this is the turnaround. The Litai were spirits of prayer. They were, you know, I believe they were ministers of Zeus that were following behind 8. They were seen as hobbling old women. Okay, they were following in the wake of 8, in the wake of ruin, and they were offering prayers that could be, uh, if you received these, or if you were offering your own prayers to them in repentance for your rash actions. So this is about making amends. This is about the accepting your ability to have faith, and not turning away your responsibility um, to accept the the error of your ways on some level. So a lot of this process, this cycle, could be about understanding areas of our life where we've been a little bit impatient, where we've been trying to rush through things, which has been causing issues. We do have a giant stack up in Aquarius right now, um, that is squaring, is in the overcoming square to Mars. Mars is co-present with Uranus, so we're trying to do something new, and we might want to do it in this really innovative, unorthodox way. We might want to do it right away, and we want to shatter all the boundaries that are, keeping us in what we perceive to be shackles of the past. But we have to be patient. All this Aquarius energy does not just manifest overnight. Aquarius is the long range view. Aquarius is a Saturn ruled sign. So Saturn doesn't do anything quickly, it moves very slowly. Even in an air sign, Saturn is still going to be uh, the boss here. It's going to be, uh, you know, encouraging us to take our time, to seek balance. I think this is one of the things I've been really excited about with a new understanding of Saturn is, yes, it's a malefic, and yes, some of these challenges may feel painful, but ultimately I think the real gifts of Saturn is a rebalancing of that right proportion that we talked about with the concept of nemesis. Okay. Uh, Mars will also be making a trine to Pluto, and a sextile to Neptune throughout this period. Okay, so those are the whole sign aspects we're going to be seeing throughout Mars's journey through Taurus 3. Now, the two fixed stars, we had 24 degrees Taurus, Capulus, and 26 degrees Algol. Both of those fixed stars are in the constellation Perseus. So we will take a look at Perseus and take a look at the mythology associated with Perseus and with Medusa, because I think that they are definitely interconnected, and you can't have one without the other. Um, so let's see what we've got here. Let me think for a minute. All right. So you can see here, all of these planets are overcoming Mars. One of the things I did want to point out is, because Saturn, and this is really the big planet that is creating some of the challenges here, is this is you know a repetition of an aspect that we experienced through most of 2020. The Saturn square to Mars, with Saturn in the overcoming position, where we really wanted to move forward. But Saturn was saying, wait, slow down. There's some things that you need, some loose ends you need to tie up. There's some responsibilities that you have before you can move forward on your new chosen path. And this is a similar thing. We may have to think about, all right, how does your vision fit into the greater scheme of things? How does your self-directed action for creating material prosperity fit into your community, your society? Are you taking action with integrity? That's something that's been coming up in the videos over the course of the last few weeks too, is really staying true to our integrity and not taking an action that would cause us to regret something in the future. So that may be something that we're dealing with. And we all fall short of the glory. There's probably been some missteps as we've been trying to figure out how to deal with this new reality that we're trying to navigate. I think everybody's experiencing this. I think the pandemic's just been a real game changer as far as how society is organized right now. And there may be some things that we just never go back to. It's been kind of I don't know, a very transformational process where we're, really struggling to emerge from whatever this cocoon is into the birth of a new arrangement, a new agreement with one another. And we've got new challenges. We've got new challenges about understanding that the actions that we take as individuals have reverberations for our communities, for our countries, for our planet, for the animals that we share this planet with. And I think that mystical folks have always known this, but I think that this is becoming more more apparent to the collective as we deal with things like climate change, and we deal with things like infectious diseases, where our personal actions can affect other people in our community. So our choices, right? Our choices can have an effect on other people. So some things to consider here. Now, again, we do have both benefics also in this overcoming position. So I think ultimately, if we're able to answer Saturn's call, we might be able to find some real benefit in the long term from doing this. But again, anytime we're trying to make changes in our life, anytime we're trying to do something new, there are obstacles inherent within the path. And it's very easy when we are trying to test things out to make a mistake, maybe through some impatience, through some hubris, through not necessarily understanding the lay of the land, the new territory that we're trying to navigate. That's human, and the key is, can we learn from our mistakes, and can we integrate them into our experience, and so that we can continually refine the expression of what we're trying to bring to fruition. And I think that's another thing to consider. Now, let's talk a little bit about Venus's square with Mars, and then we'll get into Perseus. Okay, so on February the 19th, we're going to see, let's go forward here in time. We'll go directly to it. Okay, on February the 19th, you're going to see Venus making an exact square with Mars in Taurus. And we're going to feel the lead up to this for a few days beforehand, probably starting around the 17th or so. You're going to start to feel this energy as we see the planet apply within 3 degrees. And this could be where our desires to leave that past behind, as represented by the Seven of Swords in our tarot, which is third decan of Aquarius, where Venus is residing. Could lead to some rash actions, could lead to some corruption, could lead to some ruin, folly, hubris. And we have to really be conscious of that we are we could run into some difficulty, maybe even through some jealousy or some possessiveness. We could be bringing up some anger as we leave things behind. The third decan of Aquarius was also associated with accumulated resentments. So we may be dealing with letting go of some of our accumulated resentments from the past so that we can finally move forward into our new expression. And that's not always going to be fun. That may necessitate leaving some structures behind too, because Mars is moving through an Earth sign. Now, the moon is also going to be activating this square on February the 19th too, because the moon's going to be moving through Taurus. You can see that. So we really are going to feel this quite a bit on February 19th, which is Friday. All right. So the key here would be untangling from some of these past karmic debts, from some of these old narratives. Again, stories. I think a good exercise to do is write out the story of what you are experiencing, like you are an author. This is why journaling is really important. I journal every day. I do like morning pages from this book. It's a practice I learned from this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she was a recovering alcoholic at one point, and she found that uh, some of the similar techniques for recovering from alcoholism you could use to recover from being blocked creatively. And so she talks about journaling and getting all this junk out of your head. It's not even about being creative with it. It's about how can you just get this brain dump every day so you're not carrying with you all this garbage, you know? And that's been a really helpful process for me because when I write it down on paper, I'm able to see my life as a story, and I know that I have my own subjective viewpoint of the events that happened in my life, and that allows me to have some more objectivity as I move forward along the path. So sometimes when we write things out, we can be like, you know what, that's just a story, and I can first of all accept my position, but also realize that I don't have to keep carrying it with me. I can start writing a new story. And one really interesting creative story technique is how can you write out your future? This is all about intention setting, right? How can you write out a different story if your narrative is that you're always failing in a certain area of your life, and it's because you're a victim of this and this and etc. How can you write a story that where you succeed? And how can you start to bring that into your awareness? Even just by writing it out differently, that there is potential to begin to change your consciousness in that regard. It doesn't mean we don't accept some of the sober realities of our life. We definitely have to do that, including the pain. And this might be part of the process with Mars in Taurus 3 is acknowledging some of the pain, and ultimately though so we can release it and move forward. Because I think that one of the key things that we're moving towards is once Mars hits Gemini, it's going to start to make a trine to a whole mess of planets that it used to be squared with. So we may really hit our stride in the beginning of March when Mars hits Gemini. And we might be really able to kind of take action on some of the plans that we've been making because we've been able to deal with the past in a healthy way. Okay, so that's what we've got for Venus squared Mars on the 19th of February. Okay, let's talk about what is going on the 21st. Excuse me. I always like to eat a snack before I do these talks. So sorry if I'm like muffling like my digestive process. I know that's not what you want to hear, but um, trust me, with a Taurus moon, it's better that I don't have low blood sugar during these talks rather than being hungry and like my brain just going all foggy. So sorry, probably a little too much information there, but so it goes. When Mars hits 24 degrees of Taurus, as we can see around February the 21st, it's going to be conjoining a fixed star called Capulus. And this was the sword of Perseus. So I'm going to go over to my star chart. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you what we're looking at here. So first of all, Mars is, where is Mars? Here is Mars right here, I think. There's Mars. Oops. So I'm looking at my star chart, and we're looking at the area of the zodiac. I'll zoom out just a little bit. You could see this green line here is the ecliptic, the path of the sun. Okay. And we are in the area of the zodiac where we do see this big constellation, Taurus, right? Now we have part of Taurus's body. There's Mars in the ankle of Aries, the ram. But remember, we're dealing with two different zodiacs here, the sidereal and the tropical. In Western astrology, we're dealing with tropical zodiac that's based on the interplay of light and dark over the course of the year. So here we're seeing this by projected ecliptical degree. Mars is going to be hanging out with Perseus. So here's Perseus, who was an ancient Greek hero. Here is his sword, okay? And we have one of the fixed stars in the sword of Perseus, all right, which is somewhere over here. We're going to be looking at Capulus. So one of the things that we experience with Capulus is the rash side of male energy, I guess, or masculine energy. Bernadette Brady calls it masculine kundalini energy. And like any sword, a sword can be a tool, or a sword can be a weapon. You know, it is. We can use it to defend ourselves. We can use it to murder or to hurt other people. So this is one thing that we're going to have to really work through with Mars conjoining this fixed star Capulus. So this is also a nebula area over here too. All right, there's a nebula here. And nebulas were associated with blindness. So just be careful with anything sharp around your eyes or anything like that around this period of time. Um, but in general, when Mars is here, we have to be careful that we're not getting, ruthless with our aggressive ambition, um, where we are, trying to take some kind of rash or reckless action. We may be getting frustrated that we're not moving forward, uh, you know, quickly enough, and we could get ourselves into some danger here. This may be the part of the story where we run into to eight, when we run into ruin, and where some of our delusions can cause us um, to to disregard our our higher selves and rush headlong into something. Now there's some really interesting paradoxes between Capulus and Algol. So let's talk about Algol a little bit, with the understanding that Mars is going to conjoin Algol at 26 degrees of Taurus around the 24th and the 25th of February, the same time that Mars is making a trine to Pluto in Capricorn. So this is really interesting to me. Um, I'm a little nervous about this one, to be honest with you. Here's Algol. Pluto Mars is already a very violent, difficult, um, it's a very violent and difficult position, aspect. Okay, here we see the head of Medusa, the severed head of Medusa. Algol was a binary star that was the ancients used to think of it as the blinking eye of Medusa. And since it was a binary star, there was some kind of dark satellite that would cause it to blink in and out of view over the course of a few days. And to the ancients, that was a very, very bad omen. Now, one of the other names for Algol in the Chinese tradition roughly translates to piled up corpses. So on a mundane level, we can see a lot in the historical record with Algol placements with massive amounts of death, with a lot of very violent acts. It's probably one of the most dangerous and feared stars in the heavens, if not the most feared fixed star. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a positive side. This was something that I was really debating when I was doing this research, because um, there are lots of like magical practitioners out there that use Algol for protection. And I wanted to understand that side of it a little bit better. And I think that to understand that side of Algol, the protective aspect, we have to kind of dig into whether we are accepting more of a patriarchal understanding of myth, or one rooted in the sacred feminine. And how do we balance these two approaches to myth out? Now, a lot of Greek mythology was really based on patriarchal type of beliefs, and we do see Perseus as like the conquering hero. In some of the research that I did, they talked about Perseus's sword severing, Medusa, which represented the desires of the body. In a lot of religious tradition, they associate the feminine or the sacred feminine with the body, or the body with the sacred feminine. But in these patriarchal understandings of religion, they thought of it as something to be transcendent, So in Greek myth, the story goes is that Medusa was a very beautiful maiden, and she took a vow of celibacy, and she was, I believe, an attendant in Athena's temple. And she might have been one of like sort of like Vesta, make one of the Vestal virgins. I'm not sure on that, but that seems to make sense if that could be part of the story here. But she was basically raped by Poseidon, taken advantage of forcefully in Athena's temple. And in Greek mythology, and this is something that I can't quite understand in my modern mind. She was punished, quote unquote, by Athena and turned into this hideous gorgon with snakes for hair, and her gaze would turn any man into stone. Now, I read a really interesting article online with a feminist perspective on this fixed star, and they talked about that being maybe a gift from Athena rather than a punishment, where this was Athena allowing Medusa, who had taken a vow of celibacy, to basically have protection from the male gaze, and so she wasn't like, you know, she wasn't hurt by them anymore. Her gaze would allow her to petrify anyone that would seek to hurt her anymore. So it could even be a story of protection and almost redemption on some level. Um, Now, when Medusa's head was severed from her body, Perseus used it to turn the kraken, or now we know it is basically the whale Cetus in the sky. We can see this here if we zoom out a little bit. Here's Andromeda, the damsel in distress in Greek mythology. Here's Cetus the whale coming to get her. Um, he used that to turn the kraken or Cetus to stone, right? But here's an interesting thing: when his task was done, Athena took the head of Medusa and put it on her shield and was like, "I'm going to use this head for protection, for my own protection." So this is really an interesting understanding of this myth. Is this was, Algol was the evil eye, quote unquote, but this is uh you know it could be used to drive away being taken advantage of in a certain situation. And this is something where we may have to deal with our feelings of being overcome, our feelings of helplessness, right? And we may be tempted to either lash out or to try to protect ourselves in a certain way with Mars conjoining Algol. This may be where we're letting go of old trauma. Algol and Medusa's story is a story of trauma. It's a story of abuse. And when we have Mars coming together with Pluto, man, we're probably bringing stuff up from the underworld that could lead to some really challenging emotions, some really challenging feelings that need to be released before we can move forward on our path. One of the myths that came up with this, I've been reading this book by Liz Green, The Astrology of Fate, and she talks about Ereshkigal in relationship to Pluto, which was a Sumerian goddess, a lord of the underworld, and her relationship with Nergal. Nergal was a rough equivalent of Mars in the Sumerian myth. And, Nergal went into the underworld. He brought with him 14 demons, left them at each of the 7 gates that he had to pass through. I don't know, as sentinels or something of that nature. Came face to face with Ereshkigal, and I guess there's another story in there about maybe forcefully overcoming her, but eventually they had to make some kind of agreement, and he became her wife, or her husband. Sorry. But he there's some parallels between this story and the Persephone myth, where he had to stay there for like 6 months out of the year or something of that nature. So there is definitely underworld themes. What does the underworld represent in our experience as human beings, though? Things we've pushed underneath the surface. Corruption, right? This is where, and corruption happens when we repress something and we don't deal with it. It can grow in the darkness. I mean, think about a place in your house. If it's dark and damp, and it grows things like mold or something like that, and you have to deal with it, or it could make you sick, and it may be mysterious about how it may be creating an illness. I know that I have a lot of friends who have had some dealings with mold, and they were experiencing mysterious illnesses until they found out the source of the corruption and dealt with it. And again, this could be dealing with hidden hidden trauma, so we can move forward in our life. All right. Now, one warning with that is, anytime we have Mars and Pluto coming together, uh, we can see some kind of potential volcanic type of energy. This was something that came up in Ren Butler's book, The Archetypal Universe. Volcanic catharsis, brute force, ruthlessness. Themes of abduction are common with Pluto contacts. Um, so we may be releasing some kind of violent emotion, but the key, and I think this is really important, that Algol energy, yes, it can be protective, but the flip side of that is that Medusa lost her head, right? So there are some themes where if we allow our feminine protective, so Brady calls this the feminine kundalini with Algol. If we allow our feminine protective energy, okay, that's coming bubbling up from our subconscious and bubbling up from the maybe the depths of our bodies, if we allow that to overwhelm us and to consume us, we may experience a defeat, or we may experience some kind of beheading, or some kind of like madness, right, where we lose our head. The Algol is associated with literal beheadings in history. Um, on a personal note, this is a difficult story for me though, but I had an experience a few years ago with my mother. My mother had a really severe stroke a few years ago, and was in the ICU for a number of months, hooked up to all these wires, and basically looked like she had snakes coming out of her head. And in her progress chart, she had the moon right on Algol during this period of time. So literally, she was like a walking manifestation of losing your head, and like being having the snakes. And she, for a period of time, she was not able to remember remember like who she was or anything like that. It was a really difficult period of time. There was a 2-month period to make some kind of recovery. She still has quite a bit of physical challenges, and um, is still pretty disabled from that experience. But uh, just alcohol is not really something to mess around with. It can bring us some changes of some twists and turns of fate, and it wasn't anything that was her fault necessarily. It was just a bad hand that was distributed to her, and we can see that with the moon being more about chance, about fortune. Okay. Um, Sorry to bum you out on that, but it is a story that I think about often when Algol comes up, because it was such a literal manifestation. These fixed star stories, they really can come up in really strange ways. I had another friend who was dealing with some Algol stuff, and I think has an Algol placement, and I believe that she had an experience with seeing someone who had literally been beheaded on the subway at one point, and various other stories like that. So, turning it back around to how we can deal with this energy, all right, on the 25th, we simultaneously, after we've had the perfection of Mars to Pluto, the trine, um, we do see Venus move into the first decan of Pisces, where it is exalted. So this actually might be the period of time where we're finally just leaving the past behind. We're going off in search of some kind of new sense of purpose, some new meaning. The card associated with Pisces 1 is the 8 of Cups. So our discontent that we experienced through all of our remembrances, through all of our grievances, finally is leading to moving on and potentially searching for some kind of new animating principle. So, if we face the forces of darkness within ourselves, if we uh, have compassion for the trauma, if we have compassion for our inner Medusa, who was a victim, in all respects, um, that may lead us to being able to deal with that energy in a way where we don't lose control and create a lot of damage around us, right? So that's something really to consider, because Mars really stirs things up. Mars can be a normal fight or a normal argument under a like Mars transit gets blown up to epic, very dangerous proportions with a contact with Pluto and with Algol. And it may lead to something, it may lead to a situation that you might regret if you aren't able to maintain your inner equilibrium when you're experiencing this. So that would be my warning with that. Um, and I think that the key is really the power of faith, is the power of the Litai, of repenting for the past, um, or just forgiveness. It's not just repentance. Maybe you did have a situation where you were out of alignment with your integrity, um, but maybe there's a narrative where you're telling yourself that you were at fault for something that was just uh, a blow of fate as well, and you may be carrying around guilt from that too. So the flip side of repentance is forgiveness. So by forgiveness is an act of faith also, because we are surrendering that old grievance. We're surrendering to holding on to the idea that we're in control of everything, right? When we beat ourselves up about something, ultimately we're saying that we had control of this, when in fact we may not have been in control, and we may have in fact been just dealt a bum hand. So I think those are the two ways of dealing with this. So what I want to do now is I want to go back to our chart here, and I'm going to draw something on the screen so that we can check out. We could check out. Sorry, I'm going through all these different things. There we go. I think I'm still here. Can you still see me? I don't know why you can't see my screen here, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about our hexagram. I always like to do an I-Ching reading. I'm really finding that that is an oracle that resonates with me very deeply. There are certain oracles that some people can really get a handle on, and others that maybe don't speak to you as well. And I'm really finding a lot of benefit with the I Ching. I really gravitate towards Taoism and the Tao. Uh, if I had to say a spiritual tradition that would most inform my worldview, I think it would probably be that. Um, just being able to see the I don't know, the natural rhythms of things, and try to become in alignment with it. That's something that's really appealing to me, and that I really resonate with. So the hexagram that I got for this was, again, just always an amazement, was number 5, patiently waiting, calculated waiting, or patience. And Hilary Barrett says in her wonderful translation, how can you wait patiently and with commitment, aka faith? While you wait, how can you make the best? How can you best make yourself ready? So this isn't just about waiting idly. This is about preparation, right? This is about not just waiting in resentment or in fear. This is like waiting in joy. You know, one of the changing lines of this talks about this potentially waiting in fear and resentment. Line number 4 says, waiting in blood, come out of the pit. Okay, well, we may be hanging on to those old piled up corpses that Algol, brings to the surface. This may be like a flood comes through and brings up all of our past uh, grievances, all of our past traumas, and we have to deal with it. We have to come out of the underworld. We can't get stuck in the underworld with Agreshkagal and Nergal. We've got to come out for 6 months of the year, right? Doesn't mean we never go in there to discover the source, but we can't stay there. It says, let go of negative and stubborn and outdated perspectives. This could also mean shifting a perspective from victimhood to one of empowerment. But again, you'll have to figure out your own story there. It's okay to acknowledge that you may not have been in control of a certain situation. It says that enduring a bad situation does not necessarily equal virtue. So you're not going to get bonus spirituality points for keeping yourself in the dungeon of fear, of the past, of the old narrative that seeks to disempower you. I mean, this is one of the things with Algol. Algol was all about female empowerment. So we may be really feeling a sense of empowerment when we see that contact as well. So line 6 says, entering the pit, there are uninvited guests. 3 people come, honor them. In the end, good fortune. So this is interesting. Another theme of this was they talked about gods coming in disguise. This really reminded me of the Litai, because the Litai were hobbling old women that weren't necessarily attractive like a young Medusa, and we have to embrace certain things that may look like challenges or hardships, but they may be something that are going to lead us to liberation eventually. So this is about working with what you were given during this cycle. It says to wait on your guests and be a good host. So instead of stubbornly pursuing a path that is rooted in the old story, that is disempowering, um, what is on the table for you right now? What opportunities have come up that you may be dismissing because you're so focused on what you think you should be doing? I think a lot of the times we can miss some really good opportunities. We can maybe even miss divine intervention when we're so focused on stubbornly doing things our own way. And I think that it's really important right now to be open minded to unorthodox ways of doing things. And maybe just, if something's come your way and you're like, oh, this could be good, maybe just try it out, experiment a little bit, because it could be something that could lead to something really fruitful in the future. All right, so this is changing to the hexagram number 1, which is called creative force or creative power. And Hillary Barrett asks these questions. How can you liberate creative energy? What wants to be created? Constancy bears fruit. So this is all about pure creative, maybe kundalini energy. We've been talking about dealing with both the masculine and the feminine kundalini energy, where it rises up through the body or we bring it down from the heavens. So maybe we need to balance out both of those processes. And a lot of the pain and hardship that we may be experiencing is just due to stuck creative energy. So this may be a time to just get down to business and do the work, but consistently. Doesn't mean we have to rush out and do it all at once. Doesn't mean we just sit on the couch and never do anything. It just means we do the first action and then we do the next action. And then we show up again the next day and we do the next one and the next one until eventually you've got quite a you've got quite a, oh, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? Uh, got quite a gallery of works of art that you have created, or you've got quite a field of fruitfulness, right? You've got a bunch of vegetables that you've grown patiently over time. You've proliferated some part of your life. But again, it takes constant attention over time. You can't overwater the field. You can't, yell at it to make it grow faster. You can't fight with it or chop it all up to punish it for not growing more quickly. And you shouldn't discard it at the first sign of challenge. I think this is the other thing with Mars in the third decan of Taurus. We don't want to discard. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want to discard the whole project just because we come up against a few challenging, obstacles that are probably inherent in the path. Like I said, anytime we're trying something new, there just are new things to master. And I think if you think of it in that way, this is just a new challenge to master. That can really help you release a lot of the frustration that you might be experiencing with Saturn making that overcoming square with Mars. There's probably a reason why you've been slowed down, and it's probably because you really need to let go of some of this past stuff before you can create from a new foundation. Okay, so this is the key. If you're creating from the old corrupt foundation, you're just going to keep creating the same story and the same cycle over and over again, right? If you just wipe the mold off of the wall, but you don't deal with the leak in the roof that's saturating the drywall, it's going to come back. Do you know what I'm saying? So think about it like a drywall project. You got to cut the whole piece of drywall out, patch the roof up, and really lay that foundation instead of just putting a surface band-aid on it, where it will eventually just return and maybe even return worse. So again, if you're not going to leave the past behind, this is where the suffering comes in. This is where you're choosing to suffer. You may not have chosen the trauma in the past, but now the choice is, are you going to let it consume you? Are you going to let it rule you? Are you going to let it be something that you create from? Now, I don't mean that we don't, get stronger from some of our scars. That's not what I mean. We definitely do. But how can you integrate it rather than have it be something that is stopping you? All right. That's what I've got for you today. So I hope that you are all doing well out there. Thank you for hanging with me today. Good luck with Mars in Taurus 3. Be patient, be nice to yourself, forgive yourself, release the need to um, have control, release it to a higher power. I think that's the key through the power of prayer. Okay. Through the power of prayer, you're lifted, a burden is lifted from your shoulders, right? From saying, you know what, I'm going to give this over to the natural process. That's going to be such a relief, and I think that's the key to surviving these times. So that's what I've got for you today. If you are enjoying these videos, hit that like button. That really helps the algorithm and helps get it out to more and more people. That's the first thing that can really benefit what I do here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Remember, I'm going to do another YouTube live for the full moon on the 27th. I also have a fixed star talk coming up on the 21st. I will try to include some links to that, but check out my website for that. That's through a Victoria, British Columbia astrology group, but it is open to the public. That will be Sunday, the 21st of February. If you want to make a material donation to the work that I do, I have a Venmo at Spencer Michaud, or a PayPal me, paypal.me/Spencer Michaud. All right, that's all the that's all of the things that I have to say at the end of the videos. I hope you're all doing well. Be kind to one another, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.